Hey everyone, this is John Duisberg here, coming to you with another episode of The Great Retention. Really excited about today. We're doing something brand new. Okay, so we're gonna take 7 key lessons learned from our past speakers, so from the past year, and we're gonna dive into them. Right. So, with the Great Retention, right, we are all about elevating purpose-driven leaders who can then just create a better employee experience for their teams, for their companies, which ultimately is going to help them be successful, of course, as a business, right? So that's what the Great Retention is all about. And we've just been reflecting over this last year as we kick off into 2023, and we thought, hey, there are just some really great nuggets, some really great insights that we wanted to highlight and we wanted to just dive into. And so we're bringing that to you today. I'm really excited about this episode. And I am joined by my co-founder, Prem Bhatia. And I'm so excited for you to be here with me, Prem. So you and I, hey, we're founders, right? We're founders of Cooleaf. So we're learning.
That's what they say.
We're learning every day too. So this is really exciting. And we're also joined by Jeff Bond, who's our executive producer of Chat with Leaders, to make this run of show just wonderful for our audience. But what do you think about today, Prem? Give us your thoughts for the episode.
I'm excited. And thanks to Jeff and team for always making us look good. And I'm excited to join you on kind of recapping these lessons that we've learned from the last year, how to apply them to 2023. I think it should be really good to kind of look back on what we've started last year and sort of see what are the biggest things that we can take away from that, what people leaders can learn. So I'm ready to dive in if you're ready.
I'm ready. It's a hard job to make us look good, but just gonna do it here. So, all right. Well, we'll kick it off. So, one of my favorite episodes from last year was with an incredible leader. I have a ton of respect for him. Entrepreneurial, startup guy, Sangram Vajre. He now has started his own company, Go to Market GTM Partners. Prior to that, he was the chief marketing officer at Terminus. Big success story based out of Atlanta, account-based marketing. One of the things that I thought was interesting that Sangram really kind of started to bring to light was some of the failures when it comes to bringing in leaders and hiring. And, it might be that, hey, this person, they on paper, they're the perfect fit, right? They've got the skill set, they have all this experience, but, is that the person that you need at this stage of your growth in your company, in your culture, right? And so it's really kind of taking a broader perspective about where they're going to fit and lead that team. So I thought this would be a great way to kick us off. So Jeff, if you could roll the clip.
So this idea of a dreamer to a driver really helped me, and then the company, we just helped a lot of people in the company. You think about it is like, what do you need? Don't hire for skills that you can have a gold star and do amazing things, but if you don't know why and you're bringing that person into this and what type of function they're leading, it's going to be horrible for them. It's going to be horrible for you.
Yeah. So the idea, dreamer, doer, driver, right? And maybe in those early days, we need that dreamer, right? But I think that I know Prem, from our own from growing Cooleaf, someone who has years and years of experience at much bigger companies. On paper, it may look wonderful, right? But if you're in those early startup days, that may not be the best fit, right? And so the idea of being able to actually kind of look at where you are in your stage, what's the culture fit at that level as well. I thought it was really interesting and a great point that Sangram brought up there. But what's your take?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, right, like the idea that attitude, right? We talk about attitude and aptitude, right? We've learned this, to some extent the hard way in some cases, but we've also learned that the people that we didn't think were maybe the best fit right on paper can also end up being absolute rock stars in their position, right? So it's I think the idea of like the attitude, the idea of sort of like matching that up to the culture, as opposed to just looking at aptitude. You ideally want to have both, right? But I think one can be, and I think we talk about like one can be trained for, right? Aptitude can always be something that's built up, but this idea that you have the right person with the right attitude and the right sort of grit really for us. That's been the key.
It's our core value, man.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Well, kick us off for our next speaker.
yeah, yeah, sure. So we did this one, episode 1. It was over at Mountain Seed, and it was with the CEO Carl Streck, and he's an amazing people first leader. So I think in this clip we're going to talk about how this shift from employees being more empowered to select the organization that they most feel aligned with, as opposed to the other way around. So I think in this clip we're going to hear a little bit about how Carl is approaching that at Mountain Seed and some of the lessons that he's learned around this. So you can go ahead and roll it, Jeff.
So many people are telling us at Mountain Seed, I chose Mountain Seed because of the values. I chose Mountain Seed because of the mission. I chose Mountain Seed because the mission was employee centric. Or I chose Mountain Seed because the mission said the word God in it. Like, can you even do that with HR? Like, but it was, I chose Mountain Seed. And I think that's a great thing that's happening in the business world today, is that people are leaving jobs that don't value them, that they don't feel like they can do meaningful work, have meaningful relationships, add value, feel valued.
So for when we first did that interview, it's interesting. We've worked with Mountain Seed for a while and sort of seen that culture. I think the idea that sort of what he was talking about there, from my perspective, was this is no longer like we're in a sort of a more mid to long term shift here with regards to talent, right? So a lot of people have been talking about the baby boomers retirement, and this idea that with the boomers retiring, there's actually no more room in the labor market to kind of absorb growth, right? So what we see is a structural sort of problem for a lot of organizations that aren't thinking about this in the framework that Carl is talking about here in many cases, right? Which is this idea that now your employees are choosing whether you're aligned to their values, right? You have to actually still orient yourself to that. No matter what the gyrations, short-term, midterm in the economy, those things are actually structural now in nature. So I thought that was kind of interesting. John, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, he brought up just his personal experience, right? And what I love about all these leaders, it's not like they're talking about some like philosophical. No, they're talking about here's what I've found. Here's what this is first person speaking from their experience, and the idea that it used to be where he was like had a handful of applications, and he's saying, hey, this is why we chose you, and the whole thing is flipped. Right now, it's that employee who maybe they're based in Atlanta or wherever they are. Well, now they're being recruited from a San Francisco-based company who pays a lot more, by the way, right? And so the ability for that employee to go find the job that's going to align to their their values and what they're passionate about, and gives that's the world we live in now. And so now it's flipped, and that employee is saying, hey, I chose you because of. And so it's just a huge wake up call, I think, for any leader, for me and everyone else, and just saying, hey, we've got to be really intentional about the why behind, why we exist, what we're doing,
Right.
Why you want to be part of this. So I thought that was a great point, reminder for all leaders.
Yep.
Yeah.
He does an awesome job.
Yeah. Well, we'll kind of transition into this. Our next guest, Cherie Caldwell, who's the Chief Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Officer at SalesLoft. SalesLoft has been a customer of Cooleaf for years, and so we've gotten to know them really well. Culture is really important. I think there are over 1,000 employees now all over the world, right? And being able to attract and retain diverse talent, super important. They can't grow their company if they're not able to do that, right? And so to sit down with Cherie and understand from an executive leadership perspective how they approach DE&I and how that impacts their talent, I thought was really, really valuable. So Jeff, go ahead and play this clip.
As human beings, socialize in little groups, that look like us. We
Yeah.
live in those neighborhoods with people that are like us, that are similar to us. We, that's just how we've assimilated. That's a comfort thing.
Yeah.
But then, like I said, back to the world is smaller. It's easy to have information from around the world in no time.
Yeah.
It's easy to see people. It's easy to connect with people via Zoom and other things. So it's not proximity, but you can take the time to get to know someone by just having that contact, and that exposure actually helps with the old idea problem too, right?
Yeah, Cherie's she's a phenomenal leader, and a ton of respect for her, and obviously Sales Loft. One of the things that she said in that interview that just has always stuck with me, Prem, is that she said DE&I is a contact sport. And I was like, oh, tell me more about that.
Yeah.
And she's like, you've got to bring people together and give them opportunities to interact, right? To connect and to actually build these relationships and realize, hey, we're not that different, right? And we have a lot more in common. And once you start creating that sense of community, wow, that can impact your culture in an amazing way. And so I thought that was just a great thing that I walked away from that interview with Cherie, was this, hey, this is a contact sport. How do we bring people together? By the way, how do we do that in a distributed teams environment, which can be a challenge? But I thought that was a great insight from Cherie. But what are your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I think like the general point of taking yourself out of the comfort zone, right? So taking yourself out of that comfort zone. I think Cherie kind of reflects on that this idea that, DEI initiatives can feel lightweight to a lot of folks that, really say like, well, this is just the beginning. What I really need, right? What I really maybe need is someone understanding not only from whether it's ethnic sort of backgrounds, whether it's socioeconomic, whether it's different sort of sexual orientations, whatever it might be. This idea that you can actually create linkages and connections between folks that find commonality, and do it in a way that potentially could be fun in some cases. We've seen that obviously with Sales Loft and what they've done with some of their culture. They've done a phenomenal job at that, I think. But this idea that DEI can't just be something on the wall. It has to actually manifest itself in the culture in a real tangible way for most employees to kind of connect and sort of make that a contact sport and create those connections that may not have existed before. So it's great. I thought it was phenomenal that they're doing that, and they're one of the best. So if you want to learn what Sales Loft is doing, I mean, they've done consistently one of the best jobs. So that was great. And I think, kind of moving on to the next speaker, I know we've got someone here that spoke with us, that Kevin Henry. I know that you and Kevin had chatted, but I know that he's been a servant leader, really for the better part of 25 years, I think, right? With executive HR and people leadership. I think he's got a background from Coca-Cola, Office Depot. I think he's been a part of Clorox as well, just to name a few. And he's now the chief people officer at Blue Links Corporation. So we heard from him, I think in this clip that we're going to hear now, it's his mindset around leadership team and how to best sort of serve this 2,000 plus employee base across 60 locations where he currently is, which is Blue Links. And so let's hear a little bit about this, if you don't mind, Jeff, rolling the tape.
You know what? We don't always bat 1,000. Mm-hmm. Nobody does. But the honesty is, we're going to do our dead level best to meet people where they are, pay off their own WIFM, the what's in it for me, or their own employee value proposition that's uniquely theirs. And I think if you do that, then you have a much greater likelihood of being able to retain that top talent and keep people engaged.
What I liked about this, the consistency of being a leader and the transparency. I think you talked a little bit about the transparency, admitting that we're not going to get it right every single time, right? Admitting that there's humans behind a lot of these efforts that are trying their best, right? In many cases to create the linkages and the connection and sort of fulfill that employee value proposition, which I thought was great. So the consistency and being transparent really in that, like sort of being transparent, but not just being transparent once in a while, but continuing to be transparent about the efforts that you're making. And being authentic, really, for me, this really kind of what came out of that clip. John, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it was an honor to get to spend some time with Kevin, and it immediately I knew there was no ego, Okay, so Kevin's an executive leader, has been in some phenomenal companies, no ego at all. He saw his role, his job was how do I serve best our people? And one of the other things he shared, he said, I try to create a magic moment for someone every day. How do I just surprise someone with kindness? How do I just go out of my way to show someone that I care about them as a person? And he,
Right.
and that has made such a difference, in people's lives. And we as leaders, we may not even know or see the difference that it makes, but he really shared how, that's his mindset. And I was really impressed how he just, hey, you take ego, you put that to the side. No. Our job is to serve and elevate, the people at our organizations, because they're the ones who's going to make us successful as a business, right? And I was really impressed with Kevin and how he brought that to the forefront. All right, so we're gonna keep rolling. So Donald Knight, Donald is he's a great person, phenomenal speaker. He is now the chief people officer at Greenhouse Software. It's an HR tech company in the talent acquisition recruitment space. I think they're around 800, maybe moving towards 1,000 people, 20 plus countries, nationalities, all kinds represented all around the world, right? And so, some of the things that, I thought was really interesting that Donald, brought to light. And he also shared about a conversation he had with his head of people experience, Layla, but was, okay, how do I create this sense of belonging and inclusion no matter what office I go to, no matter what team I'm a part of? If I'm flying into Ireland, if I'm going over, to Singapore, how do I still feel like, and they call it a green in a greenhouse. I'm a greenie. How do I still feel like I'm a greenie? Right. And they've went to this fully distributed teams environment. And so, that can be a challenge over Slack and Zoom and MS Teams and all these things. But that's something that, Donald has just, I think, blazing trails on when it comes to belonging and allyship. So Jeff, go ahead and play this clip for us.
And she said something to me that was very powerful. She said, the beauty behind Greenhouse, and as we continue to evolve and improve, one of the things we need to be mindful of is that we need to be a place where talent not only belongs, but that the environment should be a place where they're both respected, rewarded, and recognized.
One of the things that was really, I just learned a lot from Donald. And because we can get caught up in what's going on in the business and what we have to do, and realize that we may not be making room for additional people's voices to be heard, right? And leaving oxygen in the room to make sure that everyone is represented, everyone is included, right? And it's being intentional as a leader to be thinking about that. Hey, do I have different voices at the table who have the opportunity to share, right? And it's just being intentional to make sure that inclusion is top in mind, whether it's an all hands meeting, whether it's doing a customer event, whatever it is, it's being intentional about that, keeping that inclusion top of mind. I thought was a great point.
Yeah. I mean, I'd say I'd add to that, like, just generally, like, Donald is not afraid to speak the truth. And
Right.
That's what we like about Donald. We also had, obviously, he was a part of another panel that we did later. But he, from my perspective, I think one of the things that he has mentioned is, recognizing, rewarding those folks that are, going above and beyond, and doing that in a public and meaningful way, right? And using DEI and allyship, right, to not only recognize, but to then start really partnering with the individuals that you think can take their career and their trajectory to another level. We've done, at least for us at Cooleaf itself, our team is, we purposefully created a very, sort of a diverse team that brings a number of backgrounds and a number of different experiences to it. And I think this idea of recognizing and rewarding comes, to the ethos of what we do, of course. But I think with Donald talking about, championing, not just really being and recognizing and rewarding, but also going to that next step, which was probably not something that we captured in that clip, but the idea of championing beyond that, right? which I think he's just done a phenomenal job with. And, he's just such a great dynamic speaker. So it was awesome to kind of like work with him this year. And I know kind of jump into the next clip here, I'll kind of intro our next speaker. And it's from a live event that we did fairly recently here in Atlanta, actually. And we came together to really learn from a panel of folks. And Jeff Perkins was a part of this panel. So Jeff and I actually go back a little bit of a ways. He's a proud Emory alum as well. And he had a great run as the CEO of Park Mobile, where he oversaw global workforce. And he's now since exited that role. He's taken on a CMO role actually at a different organization. But this was a clip where he's talking a little bit about the idea of core values, the idea of how to make those real. And I think we can kind of go to that clip, Jeff, and hear a little bit from Jeff about this.
If the core values are really true to what the company is, they can be very powerful. And so, some things that we did at Park Mobile, we had 6 core values, and we truly made them part of the hiring process. We made them part of the who gets a bonus, who gets promoted, sometimes who gets fired. But because we really live the core values, it infused into the way we operated as an organization, and thus it created the culture of the company. So I think defining your core values is probably the easy part of the process, but how you live those core values out day in, day out, how you make it really a part of the organization, that's what's really going to drive your culture.
And Jeff always does a great job kind of succinctly capturing the point. And it's funny, like we talk a lot about core values at Cooleaf. We spend a lot of time with our customers on these types of issues. And, what he talks about with the idea that core values are actually something that need to be lived. That's something that we articulate pretty much on a daily basis to our customers, but also internally. And how do you bring those to life? How do you recognize and reward around that? How do you make them something that are tangible and not generic? So I thought it was great to kind of, just take Jeff's lesson here, which is it's not enough to have writing on the wall or, a mission statement up on the wall somewhere. It has to be dynamic, and you have to also revisit some of those values at times. John, what were your thoughts?
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the themes that we've been talking about with some of the other leaders, which is, employees expect more now, right? And part of that alignment to values and not being on the wall, but actually being something authentic and meaningful that is lived out, is super important, is what people expect. And in that live session with Jeff and we've talked about this with other leaders, but I'll get asked the question like, okay, well, how do you actually live those values out? How does that actually happen? And, from us at Cooleaf, with how we do recognition, right? We help organizations with recognition. I encourage leaders to think about recognition as a way to tell stories, right? Because people relate to stories, they remember stories. And when what you're doing is essentially when you're recognizing someone, you're telling a story about how, they're living out that value for that customer, for that colleague. And that's, I think that's just a super practical, way to bring values to life on that day-to-day basis. Right. And so I loved what Jeff was saying. It's something that we live and breathe. And I think it's just so important for just the overall employee experience. So let's wrap up on our final speaker, which last but not least, I really enjoyed getting the opportunity to sit down with Mike Gustafson, CEO and president of Search Discovery. Search Discovery, they're based in Atlanta, but they've got multiple offices. They've had significant growth, right? They've acquired companies, which is its own beast in of itself when it comes to culture and how you're going to, think about your employee experience. But Mike shared, Prem, I just always will remember this. He shared this insight with me that, that culture is like a garden. It's like this metaphor, right? He says, culture is like a garden. You can tend to it, you can plant seeds, but you got to kind of let it grow, right? It's got to be organic. It's got to be natural. You can't force it, right? You got to let it grow. So I thought that was awesome. Let's go ahead and play the clip, Jeff, and we'll dive in.
And so I really like the idea of a garden. It's something that we tend to, and we're focusing on And then we're trying to constantly create more space for more people to grow and for that to evolve and take the shape and be influenced by all the incredible people that we bring along on the journey with us.
So that was a really short clip of a really, really insightful conversation. But the culture is, I think that it's something that's ever changing, but it starts with your why. It starts with your purpose, your mission, your values that I think us as leaders can have influence on, of course, and reinforce. And by the way, like with economic uncertainty and think like when things get hard, you kind of, I feel like you rely on your purpose, your mission, your why, and your values, right? That's the thing that doesn't change, right? But then you let that culture grow organically and evolve, and we kind of tend to it. So I thought that was just a great analogy. But what are your thoughts, Prem?
Yeah, I mean, one of the interesting things about what he talked about, right, was like the idea that gardening like oftentimes involves, planting those sort of like fundamental seeds, but also in some cases pruning, like where things are not working. Maybe there's not a good fit. Maybe they're as you are evolving as an organization, your values ideally shouldn't change a whole lot, but maybe you're evolving to a different level and maybe that culture has changed. And so you have to be open to that change, but also at the same time prune away things that may not be working, right? Prune away things and continue to constantly like tend to it. But yeah, it's a beautiful analogy. I thought it's really well put, and Mike did a great job of just kind of encapsulating it, and good lessons for the year for sure.
That's a great point.
And I think, just overall, what I'd say is that we've got, it's been a lot of fun just this year, kind of going through these different sessions with these number of different guests that we've had, with the idea that we've also learned from the things that we've done inside of our organization. Hopefully these are, good nuggets for everybody to take away. And, excited to hear what's coming up over here in the next year that we're going to have to encapsulate. But hopefully these are some good lessons for everybody to kind of take away for 2023.
Absolutely, Prem. It's a lot of fun. And, our hope is that the Great Retention becomes a movement, right? It's a community around purpose-driven leaders, and that other leaders are able to gain lessons learned and insights that they can then take and apply to their teams and their organization and navigate all of these things that we're all, kind of in this together and working through. And so I'm excited for this upcoming year. Would love the support of our audience. We post this on LinkedIn and all the social channels, and to share and to follow and just be part of this movement. Right. And we're just excited to continue to just bring you great leaders, great stories, lessons learned. And our hope is this is going to have a positive impact for you and your team. Now for a little shameless plug about Cooleaf. We are super passionate about helping purpose-driven leaders elevate their employee experience, engagement strategy, and really be proactive when it comes to retaining top people. So if this is a priority for you, and you're interested in learning more, we'd love to talk to you. Of course, you can find out information, at our website at cooleaf.com, cooleaf.com. Happy to connect with you directly. My direct email is jduisberg@cooleaf.com. Happy to share what we're seeing in the market, just to really learn more about, your goals for creating the employee experience that you want for your company this year. But that's all for today. That's our show. So till next time, I hope that you be a leader worth following.